Someone else wrote in and asked about why we listen to, Vedic cognitions or these Rig Veda chants after meditation. Number one, it's essential. People need to know what Veda means. Veda means the underlying structure of existence. And it's good, particularly in this day and age when we're so rationally oriented, to think of that in terms of science. There's a structure that came right out of the unified field, right out of the one thing out of which all of this was born, which physicists call the unified field. That unified field, that one thing, through its own self-awareness, interacts with itself, views itself from different angles, and creates a very precise structure. What is remarkable is that the human physiology, when refined sufficiently, is able to tap in and cognize that structure. I compare it to when Edison invented the phonograph. He took a cone and he put a little needle at the end. And he spoke into the cone and the needle vibrated according to the fluctuations in his voice. He put a disc, spun the disc, actually cylinder, but we'll say disc because that's what we're familiar with. He made the disc out of wax. And when he spoke into the cone, he said, "Mary had a little lamb." That's what he said. And it etched a pattern in the spinning disc based on the vibrations in his voice and the vibrations in the needle. He hardened the disc, put it back on the turntable, put the needle into it, spun the disc. The etchings in the disc wiggled the needle in exactly the same way. And he put his ear next to the cone and he heard his own voice. "Mary had a little lamb." That's remarkable. The phonograph was invented. Like that, when the human physiology is refined sufficiently, it can tap in, just like the cone and the needle, and tap right into that underlying structure of existence. And then as it wells up from the absolute through that fine fabric, that needle, you can say, in the depth of their being, and wells up through the physiology and comes out their vocal cords. In fact, all five senses. That's called Vedic cognition. The impulses, the chants that erupted from that manifest from that, are the thrills of the underlying structure of existence, the foundation for all of this. People heard those Vedic chants thousands of years ago, and they said, "This is something great," and they memorized them. And they passed it on that way from generation to generation. It's called Vedic cognition. Now, after meditation, the physiology rests into the depth of your own being. Your awareness rests into the depth of your being, the depth of your physiology. Then afterwards, if you play those Vedic chants, it acts like the cone and the needle, and it goes in and touches that place inside where you're one with that unified field, and reawakens you to it. It reawakens you to that one thing that is the essence of all things. That one thing that is the essence of who and what it is you are. It doesn't impose anything. It reawakens you to what's already there, deep inside of you, as your own true nature. It's a beautiful thing. And that there's so much in there. Why is it that the human physiology has the ability to do that? Well, we'll talk about that another time. We'll talk about the evolution of species and Darwinism and creationism and how all that came together, how all that works. There's a reason why the human physiology, you see, is capable of cognizing Veda. There's a reason. You see? And just that little seed of knowledge, that little idea that it doesn't impose. It awakens one to their own nature. That's so huge. The whole field of human psychology can learn from that. It's not about getting a person to think a certain way, to be a certain way, to function a certain way. That's an imposition. The fundamental premise to psychological health is understanding the depth of every soul is eternal health. And it's awakening the psychology, the physiology, the totality of one's being to that which dwells inside them already. You don't impose anything. In fact, really you do the opposite. You free the physiology to awaken to its own true nature. And it's all the impositions and distortions upon the physiology that prevent it from being awake to that already. You see? Doesn't mean anarchy. There's still a structure to society, and we function through that structure, and we respect that structure. But we don't lose ourselves to the rules to the extent that it constricts our being and our soul and our life. You see? Vedic cognition. Vedic cognition.